Welcome to Brainwaves and Breakthroughs.
All right, get ready because we're taking a deep dive into this concept. It's fascinating and it could really change the world potentially. It's universal basic income, UBI for short.
UBI, yeah.
You've probably heard the idea before. Everyone gets paid regularly, no strings attached, but we're going deeper. Beyond those headlines, could this be the solution to poverty, job insecurity?
Right.
Maybe even boost everyone's creativity. We're examining the research,
Yeah.
the economic models, even some real-world tests to see if this is truly revolutionary.
Right.
Or just a pipe dream.
You know, there are so many strong opinions about UBI.
Oh, yeah.
Some people are wildly for it,
Yeah.
and others are deeply skeptical. But in this deep dive, we're all about giving you the facts,
That's it.
exploring both the benefits and the concerns, all so you can come to your own conclusions.
I like that. One of the sources you sent me used this example of a small town where every adult gets $1,000 a month, no questions asked. It paints a vivid picture. But I gotta ask, is this real or is this just a thought experiment?
That's a great example.
Yeah.
And a full nationwide UBI is still pretty rare.
Okay.
But it's getting closer to reality than you might think.
Oh, really?
There are pilot programs happening all over.
Wow.
From Stockton, California, all the way to Namibia. They're all testing different amounts and different approaches.
Yeah.
And the core idea is, by providing a financial floor,
Right.
no one falls below a certain standard of living.
Okay, so it's not about making everyone rich, but making sure those basic needs are met.
Exactly.
One source, a report from the Roosevelt Institute, highlighted some potential positive impacts on health and well-being.
Right.
It even cited a study in Manitoba, Canada, where just providing a basic income led to 15% fewer hospital visits.
Wow.
That's huge. Is that something we can count on, or is it too early to say?
It's a compelling link.
Yeah.
And that Manitoba study really shows how giving people direct financial assistance can relieve a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And that can lead to people making better choices and having better outcomes for their health. Data's still coming in. But a 2021 review of UBI studies found evidence over and over for reductions in stress, anxiety, and even improvements in mental health. It seems like that cushion, that financial cushion, allows people to put their health first in ways they couldn't before.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you're constantly stressed about bills, it's tough to focus on anything else,
Absolutely.
let alone your health.
Right.
But beyond just feeling better, some people think that UBI could actually boost local economies,
Yeah.
especially during tough times. How would that work?
Well, think about it. If you put money directly into people's pockets, they have more to spend.
Yeah,
And that increases demand for goods and services.
makes sense.
Especially locally, which creates this ripple effect that helps keep the whole economy afloat.
Huh.
There was a study in Finland. They had a basic income pilot program between 2017 and 2018.
Yeah.
And it actually found that people who got UBI were more likely to be employed.
Oh, wow.
And they even earned slightly more than the control group.
Wow. So instead of just being a safety net, it actually could proactively help the economy?
Exactly.
Now, another point I hear a lot is that UBI could encourage people to become entrepreneurs
Uh-huh.
and innovators.
Yeah.
One source called it a launch pad for creativity.
Oh, nice.
Do you think it's really going to lead to all these new businesses and people going after their passions?
It's definitely an exciting thought.
Yeah.
If people have that security, that basic financial security, they might feel bolder. You know, they might take risks,
Yeah.
like starting a business or going after a career that they love. But that might not make a ton of money.
Right.
There's a study by the Jane Family Institute that looked at the Stockton Economic Empowerment demonstration. And it found that people who were getting that basic income were more likely to go from part-time to full-time work.
Oh, interesting.
And they had greater self-reported well-being. So it seems like having that stability from UBI let people invest in themselves, their skills. And that gave them even more opportunities.
That's fascinating. It sounds like a ripple effect, not just for people, but for industries and innovation overall.
Exactly.
But let's be real.
Yeah.
This all sounds incredibly expensive.
Right.
And wouldn't this just make people stop working? I mean, those are big concerns.
You're hitting on the two biggest elephants in the room when it comes to UBI.
Okay.
The cost.
Yeah.
And whether people will still want to work.
Right.
We need to talk about those.
Let's do it. Because on the surface, it's easy to get swept up in all the good stuff.
Right.
But we got to look at the whole picture.
Absolutely. The whole picture. First, the cost. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
UBI would require a lot of funding.
Right.
We're not talking about spare change. We're talking tax increases, maybe for higher earners or corporations,
Okay.
maybe moving money from other programs. There are options,
Yeah.
but they all have trade-offs.
Yeah, that makes sense. You could be gaining financial security, but maybe at the expense of other programs or higher
Yep.
taxes. Tough choices. And then there's the work question.
Yes.
If everyone's getting a guaranteed income, wouldn't some people just, decide not to work?
That's a natural concern.
Right.
And honestly, it's complicated. It's more complex than just yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us ask, why do we work? Is it just for the money, or is it something else? Studies are actually mixed on this.
Oh, really?
Some, like that one in Finland we talked about, show that people don't just quit working when they have UBI.
Okay.
In some cases, more people actually got jobs. Other studies show a small decrease in work hours. But often that's because people are going back to school, taking care of family,
Right.
or starting their own businesses, things that benefit everyone in a different way.
That's a good point. It's not that they're lazy. They're choosing to use their time differently.
Exactly.
Maybe chasing opportunities they couldn't before. But there's another potential issue I'd like to touch on. Inflation. If everyone has more money all of a sudden, wouldn't that just make prices skyrocket? Basic supply and demand, right?
You're right to bring that up.
Yeah.
A sudden flood of cash into the economy
Right.
could definitely lead to inflation.
Right.
And then that would make the UBI less effective.
Yeah.
So careful economic management is really important here. It's about finding the right balance.
Yeah.
Making sure the basic income is enough to make a difference, but not so much that it causes runaway inflation.
Right.
Some economists have this idea of tying UBI to inflation.
Oh.
So as prices go up, so does the basic income.
So it stays effective.
Exactly.
So it seems like there's a lot to think about, a lot of variables, a lot of potential solutions to consider.
It really is.
So we've talked about the pros, the cons, but could UBI actually work in the real world? Is this something we could do on a larger scale, or is this just a nice theory?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And like most things, it depends. It depends on the country we're talking about.
So where might it work better?
Yeah.
And where might it face bigger challenges?
Well, let's look at some examples. Developed nations, with really strong social safety nets, like those Scandinavian countries.
Right.
They often come up in these UBI talks. They're already set up for, wealth redistribution and social support.
Yeah.
So adding a UBI might actually be easier for them.
Hmm.
And then there are those countries with a ton of natural resources,
Like
oil-rich places like Norway,
Right.
or countries with a lot of minerals like Botswana.
Oh.
They could potentially use taxes on those resources to fund a UBI.
Oh, interesting.
It's not a simple fix, but it shows how different economies could make UBI more or less realistic.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It's going to
Yeah.
work within the existing system.
Right.
What about places where it might be harder to make UBI work?
In developing economies with fewer resources, it'd be much tougher.
Makes sense.
And large populations make it even harder.
Yeah, the cost would be astronomical.
Right, the cost goes way up. And then there's the government.
Oh, right.
In a country with weak leadership or lots of corruption,
Yeah.
even if you had the money, there's a real chance the system could be mishandled, or that money gets diverted, and then the whole program falls apart.
So you need a solid foundation to build this on. It's easy to think about UBI in this abstract way,
Yeah,
but it really comes down to real people's lives.
absolutely.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about who wins and who loses with UBI, who would benefit the most.
The people who need it most, right?
Yeah.
Low-income families, people who are unemployed or underemployed,
Right.
and groups that are more vulnerable, people with disabilities,
Yeah.
or people facing discrimination. For those people, UBI could be a lifeline. It could help them afford basic necessities.
Like food and housing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe even escape poverty.
Mm.
There's a study by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities,
Yeah.
and they found that a UBI program in the U.S., it could actually cut poverty rates in half.
Wow, that's amazing. It really shows how UBI could help address those bigger issues of poverty and inequality.
Right.
But are there groups that might actually be worse off with UBI? I mean, we need to be honest about all sides of this.
Absolutely, we do. There are potential downsides for certain groups. For high earners, their taxes might have to go up to fund UBI.
Right.
So they'd have less money to spend.
Makes sense.
And businesses, especially ones that rely on low-wage workers, might see their costs go up.
Yeah, if workers demand higher wages or just decide not to take certain jobs.
Exactly. And then there's the impact on the programs we already have, like welfare. Some people think UBI could replace those or add to them.
Streamline the safety net.
Right. But there's also the risk that people who rely on those specific programs, they could lose access to benefits that are designed for their needs.
Oh, I see. So it's not as simple as adding UBI on top of everything
Well, no,
else.
it's not. It's like this puzzle where all the pieces affect each other.
We've been talking a lot about the economics of UBI, but there's also the cultural side, right?
Yeah, definitely.
How people view work, fairness, responsibility. Those things really shape how they feel about UBI.
Absolutely. Culture plays a huge role. In those individualistic cultures where hard work and self-reliance are big values, people might be against UBI.
They might worry about people becoming dependent on the government.
Exactly. But in those collectivist cultures where community support is more important, people might actually like UBI.
They'd see it as making sure everyone's taken care of.
Right. Reducing inequality.
It's fascinating how one policy can be seen in such different ways. Are there any other cultural factors that matter here?
Oh, for sure. In societies where equality is really valued, UBI would probably be popular.
As a way to level the playing field.
Exactly. And religion and personal philosophies, those play a role too. Some religions stress charity and social justice,
Yeah.
which really fits with the idea of a safety net for everyone. Others focus more on personal responsibility.
Right.
They might think UBI interferes with how the economy should work.
It seems like UBI forces us to think about those big questions about society and how we should take care of each other. It's not just about money, it's about our values.
It really is.
This has been such an interesting conversation so far. We've covered so much. What UBI is, the good, the bad, the economics of it, the social aspects, the cultural aspects. It's a lot to think about.
It is. And it's important to remember there's no single answer when it comes to UBI.
Right.
What works in one place might be a disaster in another.
It's not some magic solution.
Right.
And it's definitely not one size fits all. But it makes you think about our economic systems,
Yes.
our values, our future.
Exactly. That's why it's important to have these nuanced conversations.
To get beyond the simple arguments.
Right. To really understand the complexity.
Yeah.
You've got people who are really passionate on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get caught up in the hype or the fear. But in the end, it's about understanding the pros and cons.
Looking at all sides.
Exactly. And having a thoughtful, informed dialogue.
And that's what we've tried to do here, right?
I think so.
To give you, the listener, the information to form your own opinion and hopefully spark some curiosity to keep exploring this.
Absolutely. The more we understand complex issues like this, the better we can talk about them.
And help shape the future we want.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up, what's one thing you'd like our listener to really think about? What question could really get them thinking about UBI on a personal level?
How about this? Just imagine, you wake up tomorrow and UBI is real. It's happening.
Okay.
What changes for you in your everyday life?
Yeah.
Do you still go to the same job?
Right?
Or do you try something new, a different career?
Yeah.
Do you spend more time with your family?
Mm.
Finally go after that hobby you put off?
Oh, that's a good one.
Do you feel more secure?
Yeah.
Like you have the freedom to make choices that really matter to you.
That's such a good question. It really makes you think about what UBI could mean personally. It's not just the money. It's about, like, could this make people's lives better? Could it change society?
It makes you rethink work,
Yeah.
how we define success, what really matters.
Right.
It also makes us think about work itself, in the future.
Mm.
With all this automation, AI taking over jobs,
Mm.
what will work even look like?
That's a big question.
Will we even have enough jobs? Will new ones pop up? How do we make sure everyone has a chance to do well no matter what the economy's doing?
These are big, big questions.
They are.
And UBI is just one part of it.
One piece of a very complex puzzle.
But it's a piece that could change everything. How we live,
How we work.
how we connect with each other.
This is just the beginning. Our little exploration of UBI.
A starting point.
But hopefully it's given you some things to think about,
Yeah.
to talk about
Mm-hmm.
with your friends, your family, your community.
Yeah, to start those conversations.
And maybe, just maybe, help build a future that works for everyone.
I couldn't have said it better myself. This has been a fascinating deep dive into universal basic income. It's complex, no easy answers. Oh. But it's something we need to pay attention to really think about. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And remember that question. Imagine your life with UBI. What would you do differently? What kind of world could we create together?